And gentlemen, thank you for joining me today on Jay Slay, Made in the USA, where we explore truth, expose deception, and inspire courage. Guys, it is Saturday afternoon, late in the afternoon. Just got off the baseball fields and a lot of Little League games, soccer games, all that today. And it brings back those old vibes. And I was so honored yesterday to have one of my very good friends, former Major League Baseball player Ben Zobrist, to come on the show and talk about a lot of things. Let me give you a little bit of background. Probably goes without saying, but Ben played for four different major league teams as a super utility player over a 13-year big league career. So just that alone, there's not a lot of guys, I know this personally, that get to play in the big leagues at all, much less for that long. This culminated in an extremely successful time with the Chicago Cubs, including leading them to the World Series championship, winning it in 2016, and being named the World Series most valuable player. You know, I personally got to know Ben not too long after his career ended in 2019, during a time when we were both personally searching for what was going to be next in our lives. And here's what I know about Ben. I saw that he was a man who was committed deeply to his personal faith and living for Jesus Christ, making the decisions that the Lord was telling him in his heart were the right ones, even during a time of personal loss and kind of a hard personal adversity. We'll put it like that. So I have great trust and respect for Ben, because I know how easy it would have been for him to make different decisions, to go in a different direction. And man, that guy stayed the course. Now Ben is the founder and president of Champion Forward, a nonprofit organization committed to empowering athletes, parents, and coaches to thrive on and off the field. What I think is really special about this upcoming conversation, guys, is you're looking at a guy who achieved his dreams and then another guy who got so close, because I was right on the cusp of the big leagues. But both of us had a time of, personal searching, darkness, looking for what was next in our lives. And all of us have gone through that, whether you've been an athlete or not. So I think whether you're a young athlete of any sport, or just a high performance kind of a person who, can live and die with how did I play? How did I do? How did I speak? All those things. You can gain greatly from this conversation that we are about to have right now. So I know you're going to enjoy this conversation with Ben Zobrist, the founder and president of Champion Forward. Check this out. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining me today on Jay Slay, Made in the USA, where we explore truth, expose deception, and inspire courage. I was just telling today's guest, my good friend Ben Zobrist, that today's going to be all about inspiring some courage. I'm excited to get on this, brother. Thanks for coming.
Yeah, absolutely, bro.
Good to see you again.
Good to see you too.
Well, man, we've gotten to know each other pretty well the last 3-4 years. And I remember when I first met you, your baseball career had just ended, I think, pretty recently to that time.
Mm-hmm.
And man, you were digging deep into the emotional intelligence. I forget the name of the group that you invited me to, but it's where we really connected, got to know each other, and we were learning all about what was going in the heart, the mind, and it was all a bunch of former athletes. It was super cool.
Yeah, it's definitely been a life-changing kind of work that I started doing after I quit doing the work of baseball, which, as you know, like there's a lot that goes into that. And, whenever you transition into that next part of your life, you got to find things that you're passionate about. And I certainly found a passion in that kind of work early on.
Yeah. Well, for me, it was so cool to connect with guys who were former athletes. We had a former NFL guy, several former ball players, and then some guys who just were in a career transition. But we were all about early 30s, mid 30s at the time, maybe even older than that. It might have been
There's
30,
a few of us that
36, 37. I think I was on the older end of that.
Me too.
Yeah. But you know, there's these different, anytime that you're leaving something that has been your whole life, which you hate to say as a Christian who's also a baseball player that baseball was kind of my life, but the truth is it was. A lot of your identity's wrapped up into it, probably more than is healthy.
Oh, yeah.
And for me, and my audience knows this, that led into a dark time where I tried to get back involved in sales and making money in business because I wanted to be somebody again. But now all this baggage I had not really addressed. And it led into just a dark time, you know, and I can get into it if the conversation leads us there. But addictions and other things soon followed because I didn't give myself the time that I needed to reestablish, like, who am I now without this thing? So now I did it up to AAA.
Yeah.
You were World Series MVP. So what was it like for you?
The transition?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was challenging to say the least because, you know, obviously at the same time, I was trying to transition to learning how to be a single dad and figuring out all of that. And so, for anybody out there that has ever had to try to be a single parent, it's not an easy task. You know, it's just, it's a grind, a different kind of grind, you know, and especially you have to build a level of capacity to care for kids and their needs. And, you know, it was just kind of a time for me of like, okay, baseball's done. I knew how to handle that. It was like, okay, I know how to handle that job and all the things that are going to be thrown at me.
Yeah.
But it's a totally different animal when you start trying to handle, you know, kids that are, you know, in adolescence or early adolescence ages. They have a lot of things that they have to work through, and you have to work through with them as a parent. So I think I found a level of humility in parenting that I've never even experienced in baseball of all the years we played.
Geez. And that's a whole nother layer for you added on top of the whole identity that changes. You're not, you know, going to the field every day anymore, all of that. What about on the baseball side? And even before that, I mean, I know you well enough. You were even dealing with some things internally once you'd achieved that level of success where you are a big leaguer. And it's just like, especially again, as Christian athletes, we're given some good lessons along the way to say, hey, no matter how high you go in that sport, if that's all your life is, it'll never be enough. If that's all that it is, it doesn't matter if you become a World Series MVP, but you got that. How was that affecting you before you even left?
Well, to a certain degree, I started to retire right after we won the World Series in Chicago in 2016. And in my mind, I mean, obviously I was going to play my hardest and try to win other championships the last 3 years, but I had a 4-year contract with Chicago.
Okay.
And we won in the first year. And when you accomplish that thing that you've been going after, I think for those people that have ever tried to go get something that was really, really challenging and then they got it, there is a level of letdown that comes after that. And for me, it was a very stark letdown. It was I went into a darkness during that period of time between 2016 and 17 where really struggled with depression.
While you're putting the uniform on?
Well, it was the off season. And so I went straight from winning the World Series with the Chicago Cubs to, you know, Conan O'Brien and Jimmy Fallon show and Disney World on a private jet and all the most amazing kind of rewards you could get from being the World Series MVP. And I had
That's right.
a keys falling out of my pocket. I had I just had tried to figure out why is it that now I feel more empty than I did before. I had a faith. My faith in Jesus was always the most important thing to me. I felt like this is a platform. I want to be able to win for Christ. I wanted to find a way to feel like everything that I was doing on the field was translatable to real life. And then at some level, I realized there was a carrot that I always had in front of me that I could just go try to achieve and grab. And I think that's amazing. It's amazing to have those things to go after, to try to achieve. The problem is if that is the end all be all, you will find an emptiness at the end of it. And to a certain degree, I had all these accolades at that point in my career, but I had 5,000 requests still in my inbox from my agent saying, hey, there's these people who want you to do this and want you to do that. And I had a really hard time as an individual trying to say no to all that and trying to say, okay, I just need to go rest and take care of myself. I felt like I was letting everybody down. I felt like as I had to say no to a lot of things, I was letting a lot of people down, and I actually felt more pressure than I actually probably felt during the World Series while I was playing, and that's what led me into depression. And so it was this reality that I started to look inside and go, wow, like I'm not okay with myself.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not okay with having to say no to people. I'm not okay with that kind of being the last thing that I achieve as a baseball player, if it's the last thing. And I started, as I said, maybe starting that retirement process before I was actually retired, because I'm going, okay, now what's next?
Mm-hmm.
What do we do after you go and accomplish something like that? There was an emptiness to it. And, I always think back to Tom Brady after he won his first or second or third Super Bowl. And he was asking the same question, like, is this all that there is? Like somebody asked him, like, isn't it so amazing to win Super Bowls? Well, yeah, it is. But then what else is there?
Yeah.
And I think as a human being, what you start to learn is life is not made up of achieving things. And as an athlete, as you know, anybody that really excels in, it could be business or any field that you want to excel at. When you start to excel and then you get the things that you never thought that you would get, it is so performance oriented that you can't keep going. Like there's at some point, the performance runs out. At some point you have to retire. At some point somebody tells you you're not good enough.
Yeah.
And you have to learn to deal with that. And I was starting to deal with that for the first time, really, for the first time in my athletic life, which started at 5. Then I was 35 at the time of this.
Mm-hmm.
It was the first time I was actually going, well, who are you when you take this uniform off? Because you know who you are when you have it on. But now that life is going to be different, and you're going to have to face up, now what? Now what are you going to do now that you've achieved all this? What are you going to do with it? And I felt all this pressure that I don't know what I'm going to do.
Now, how old were you the year you guys won the World Series?
35, I believe.
So you were So you were getting up there in age as far as Major League Baseball players go.
I knew that the end was near.
Yeah,
I mean, it's rare to play till you're 40.
But I bet not everybody on your team that won with you all walked away depressed or feeling that this inner angst. So what was different with you? Was it that you were seeing a bigger picture in some ways, or why do guys react differently?
That's a good question. I just know for me, the way that I reacted had a lot to do with my codependency.
Okay.
I was codependent with how other people felt about me and what I had to say yes or no to. I was trying to meet everybody's needs, and it's impossible.
Yeah.
It's impossible to
That's
do
where
that.
like a non-Christian athlete that doesn't care about it, like maybe has an advantage emotionally.
Probably.
Because they're like, I don't care about doing a signing thing with those people.
Probably. But I felt a lot of pressure. I didn't want to let people down, and I felt like now that I'm the World Series MVP, I got to live up to what people are asking of me.
Impossible.
It's impossible.
Yeah.
It is. At some level, people are going to ask too much of you when you put yourself out there if you don't have healthy boundaries. So that's one of the things I had to start to learn is how to say no to protect myself so that I could be there for the people that needed me the most. At some level, when you become a personality or you become a celebrity or you become something that people want something from, it's amazing to be able to have that platform to share something that's important to you to them. You might be able to give something away that's amazing, like my faith, or give away my of my time and energy to serve youth, which is something we're doing with Champion Forward, as we'll talk about a little bit later. But that can't be an endless tank that I never say no to things that are coming my way. And so just learning boundaries, I think, is one of the things that as an athlete, you learn to say, no, I have no weaknesses. I am able to carry the weight as much as you ask me to carry it. I'll carry it. And that's the moment that I realized I am incapable of carrying the weight of everything that I realized I was putting on myself. It wasn't everybody else that felt like I needed to say yes.
Yeah.
And it wasn't God that felt like I needed to say yes all of it. It was me. I thought that I had to all these things. And so it was pressure I was putting on myself, and I hadn't, and to a certain degree, I think I used that as a coping mechanism for the stress. It's like, oh, if I say yes and I take care of what they're needing from me, then I won't have to deal with the stress of saying no.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So
And
you're not totally doing it for it's really to make yourself feel better.
yeah,
Yeah.
I wasn't doing it for the right reasons at times. And I
What?
realized, I thought I was, but I was
Yeah.
doing it for me.
So I could see how that would happen during the lull of an off season when really you need a break, but you're not getting a break. You're not giving yourself a break. Then you go back and you strap it on again. Like, did that depressed feeling dissipate when you went back to play, or did it kind of hang around?
I had a situation in spring training where I literally woke up in the morning with the word enough on my brain. Enough, 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 enough. And I was just like, it was kind of weird. I wasn't hearing a voice. I've never not heard an actual voice before, but I had been spending a lot of time in prayer, and I had been trying to think through what do I do to get myself out of this?
Yeah.
And as I felt like that word was just as I was waking up out of a sleep, it was as if it was coming from outside of me, and I was like, what does this mean? What does it mean? Enough, enough, enough. And then I started praying to the Lord. I was like, okay, God, maybe, yes, okay, enough of the self-pity and the feeling bad for myself. Like, I should be grateful and thankful for all the things that I just got to go through. And it was like he stopped me in the moment, and it was like he said, that's not what I mean at all. What I want you to recognize is that when you're weak like this, I want you to know that in that moment, you're still enough for me to want to send my son to the cross to die for you, to take care of you and be your hero when you can't be the hero for other people.
Mm.
Right. And that was the moment where I just had this watershed moment of like, okay, so it's not all on me. And I think some of us have a savior complex at times. Like if I don't do it, nobody's going to do it.
Yeah.
And we put ourselves into this mental unhealth compromising state that I had done to myself. It wasn't anybody else's fault. It was I was really good at baseball, and people wanted to experience that joy with me, and I loved it every second of being able to do that. But then I didn't love everything that came with it.
Yeah.
And sometimes you don't understand all that comes with some of those things that you want. And so I was starting to transition and go, okay, now that this is kind of the thing that I always thought I wanted, and now I realize I don't really want it all that much. I still want to be a good player. I want to help my team win, but I don't want to be in the center of the universe. It was time for me to start to figure out who I was. And as you know, when you have those moments of paradigm shift, that's when things have to change.
Yeah. I want to ask you about this. It sounds like the paradigm shift started when that word hit you enough. You started to know, like, okay, I don't have to do all of this and continue to do it. I've always thought a lot, when I got into pro baseball, I really, as a Christian, gave myself a lot of license to the point where a lot of people wouldn't know what I believed. It was pretty sad looking back. But in some ways, those releases, sinful lifestyle really that I engaged in on the road, you just kind of like become a part of the culture. And and this is probably the wrong way to think. I know it's the wrong way to think, but because you have these little outlets, the nightlife, all this stuff, it made some of that maybe pressure that I felt when I was trying to live it all right by the rules. Some of that was dissipated. Now it came back to bite me in a huge way. Like I said earlier, when I walked away with addictions and other things that I had to spend some years working through. But for you, I mean, nobody's perfect, but I know for the most part, you didn't engage in that kind of lifestyle where you just bought in to the big league culture. How did that affect you? Because I know like 80%, 90% of the guys that you were with were probably not living the way that you were living on the road, especially.
Well, I think there's a lot of coping that goes into high performance. It doesn't matter what realm you're in, what field you're in. Anybody that is a super high achiever or high performer oftentimes finds ways to cope that are unhealthy.
Yeah.
Away from it because the pressure is so high. I think that's pretty well documented in the celebrity culture in general, because when you're always in front of cameras or you're always performing for people, you lose sight of what it's like to just be human and be okay with yourself just not needing to perform for people. And coping mechanisms are real, and it doesn't matter whether you have ever been a celebrity or been in the limelight before. I think everybody deals with them because it's natural. It's natural for us to seek the path of least resistance.
Mm-hmm.
And when the thing is in front of us that is easily, an easy dopamine hit, that's what we go for. That's what we reach for.
Yeah.
And learning how to apply some of the principles of athletic excellence and training into the emotional realm, into the mental health or the spiritual realms, as you know, discipline and trying to learn how to expose some of the dark parts of our own heart
Mm-hmm.
is one of the biggest challenges that I think I have had to face outside of the game, right? Is learning what are the dark parts inside of my heart? What are the shadows that I carry that I need to address, face up to, and come up with a game plan as to how I'm going to overcome those over time, because they're not easily overcome. And we all have them.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Well, so you get out of baseball,
Mm-hmm.
right? And like I'd said, I think about a year, maybe 2 years after you were out of the game is when we met. We had a lot in common. You were already talking about going to school at that time for psychology or mental health in order to help others. But at the same time, you were still working through things in your own life.
Mm-hmm.
So walk us through a couple of years there around the time we met that led you to where you're at today with Champion Forward. Because that just didn't happen in a day where it's like, I do Champion Forward.
No, it took a few years for me to work through my own stuff that I was going through, and then start to get really inspired to help other people work through theirs. And I remember when we met, we actually, I think, met at a Bible study in town, and we're both trying to learn about God and trying to figure out ourselves, and
figure out what's next.
And we connected on that realm of like, okay, I'm not where I want to be. And I know there's a calling for me after this thing that I was called to for a long time. Not really sure exactly what it is or how I get there, but I do know that I'm going to be the most authentic version of myself that I've ever been.
Mm-hmm.
No more putting on a show. The performance is done. Like, there's no more to achieve athletically, but you have a young family. You have to go out and try to figure out what you're passionate about. What do you want to do that not only benefits you, but benefits the world around you, your community around you, and your family and the people around you? And I'll never forget us sitting down at breakfast and just hearing that passion in you and knowing that there's something there that I want to help him bring out, whatever that is. And what we ended up doing is I came up, I heard about what do you call it? Like, it was like, how many days were we together?
At your place?
Yeah.
3.
Okay. 3 days with a few guys. And
this is the thing I was saying earlier that had all the former athletes in it. All of us were in transition. And I couldn't think of the name of it either.
Well, the collective put it together. Okay.
There we go.
The collective global put it together. It was an intensive. That's the word I was trying to think of. An intensive where we got together as a group of guys. We did some intense work for a couple days, and then we traveled together for a number of months, right? And when you get into this trusted space of a group of people where you start to share some real vulnerabilities and some of the deepest things that you've struggled with and worked on in your life, you build a bond, right? And as we built that bond as men, we also learned about ourselves as we were learning about each other, right? And so we started traveling together as we're both trying to figure out what's next. And what has taken place over the last 3 years is, for me, I want to help inspire and bring out some clarity on what we were really made for. And that's why that intensive, I went through 2 of them with 2 different groups of guys. You were in one of the groups, but I went through the other one kind of as helping facilitate to a certain degree. Mm-hmm. And as I did that work with other men, I realized, okay, what realm do I want to bring this to? Well, sports is the realm that I came from, and it's the realm that I have a platform in. And there's younger people and there's families that look at what I did, and they want to hear what I did and how I did it. And I know the sports culture. And then you add in this added NIL thing that's happening in sports, which is I mean, that's got a lot of issues with it right now because it's really NIL's name, image, likeness, right? It's bringing money, essentially bringing the professional realm of economics into the youth sports realm, which is supposed to be about development.
Beyond like even before college.
Before college, even now, it is these kids are in a professional sports environment because essentially they're vying for money.
Yeah.
They're vying for money as high school kids now.
It just sounds unhealthy. Like at first.
It's very unhealthy. It's not only unhealthy for the athletes because their brains aren't fully developed. It's unhealthy for the families and for the coaches. There's a lot of good coaches leaving sports right now because of this. And so as I did this work and learned about emotional intelligence and why isn't this more in the sports world? Why has this not gone into that realm as much? And then I realized, man, who needs it the most right now is the youth sports realm at some level. And you can't serve everybody. So the high school kids are these kids that are just that close to getting the scholarships. And then as soon as they get those scholarships, they're a couple years away from being professionals themselves, right? So I think we have to address some of these issues early on. And one of the main things we're addressing is anxiety and depression on a youth level, which is at an all-time high. And now there's some certain studies coming out. NCAA just came out with a study that says that even athletes are actually dealing with a greater percentage of suicidality than the regular academic population.
Crazy. And why do you think that is?
I think the pressure is greater than it's ever been. I think social media has ramped up everything to a degree to where athletes feel like they have to be perfect in every realm. It's not just athletically. It's academically. It's socially. They've got to perform all day long, and they don't know how to actually connect and be vulnerable while they're also trying to be amazing at something.
You know what's crazy is that because I deal with a lot of things right now outside of the sports world entirely, and I believe you because I saw it. I know the pressure of it all. I can see how it would be worse today. But on the other hand, in running parallel to that. Mm-hmm. In culture, and everybody's told like you don't need to really try. Like there's a completely different culture going on at the same time with youth, where it's like just it's always somebody else's problem. Yeah. You're not responsible for anything, but yet on the athletic side, you're saying that the stakes are higher than ever, the pressure's higher than ever. That's just weird to me that those two things, because both are real.
They coexist. It's a paradox of sorts for these kids because on one hand, they are being asked to be greater than they've ever been. To be a great baseball player now, if you're not throwing 95 in high school as a pitcher, you're not barely getting drafted. You probably won't.
That's unreal.
It's unreal. When we were going through 95, you were getting drafted
immediately. Yeah. In high school. Yeah.
So these kids are blowing out their elbows at 13 years old, because they're throwing so hard. And it's just the development has ramped up the performance, the physical performance to be great. Mm-hmm. has gotten higher than ever. At the same time, I do think there's something culturally happening where it's way easier to become a victim than to become resilient. And it's almost like you're rewarded for being a victim socially at times. And, I think one of the things that we have to start to get comfortable with again is being uncomfortable. We have so much comfort, and some of these kids are looking at screens so often that their dopamine hits are just over and over and over and over and over again. And all that creates a level of like, well, I just want to be comfortable. Mm-hmm. And they're becoming really uncomfortable early on in their athletic achievement because they realize they've got to work really hard at that to be great. And academically, that puts some pressure on them, and they're uncomfortable there. But then when it comes to things that are like, they're unable to overcome, it seems that it's easy to just say, well, if I can't be perfect, I'm out. Mm-hmm. I'm a victim of everything else too. And at some level, we have to start to help them become okay not being okay. You got to be okay with the expectations that you're going to fail more than you're going to succeed. Is it enough to actually pursue and fail? Or is it not enough? Can it be a great character builder to actually go after a dream and not make it?
Well, I remember just a microcosm of that, and you would know this, but it took me way too long to figure this out. When I learned to walk to the plate as a hitter, and have a great at bat, to see the ball well. Maybe the pitcher throws some great pitches on the black on the outside, and I foul tip them off, but I'm right on them. Mm-hmm. And then, I line out to the first baseman. Mm-hmm. I put the barrel on the ball. When I got to the point where I could run back to the dugout feeling basically just as good about that as when it happened to go over his head for a double, mm-hmm. My entire game changed. I became so much more healthy because I realized I did the same thing in both at bats. Mm-hmm. One of them, I happened to hit it a little higher. The other one went right at the guy. Mm-hmm. Both were good at bats. And it was this matter of learning to control what I could control and letting that dictate how I felt about the game, not about my spirit or my identity, but the game, right? Mm-hmm. Did I do my job? And I remember those books there was one called Mind Gym. There was one called Mental Toughness. The ABCs of Hitting. There were different books I started reading that were very good to help me be a pro. Instead of an amateur up here, a pro up here. I think what you're doing goes a level beyond those books because they helped me emotionally, but they were about the mental game of baseball, right? Sure. So what is Champion Forward doing and what are you doing beyond just the brand name that takes it beyond a mental or a mental game book?
Well, we're delivering... early on, we're trying to deliver an emotional intelligence self-starter kit essentially for the kids, the parents, and the coaches, and for school systems. So if there's a school system or a travel system where they're seeing unhealth, not just in the kids, but in the parents and the coaches, there needs to be a level of emotional intelligence, emotional language. You got to get started somewhere in order to start to create a more healthy way to pursue greatness. And that's what Champion Forward exists, to try to help people not be a lesser version of themselves out there, but be a more full and whole version of themselves as they go out and try to perform greatly. Because in order to do so, you got to be able to process what you're going through. Mm-hmm. And you can't do that in connection. We talk about awareness, we talk about balance, and we talk about connection. You can't do good self-awareness work unless you actually look at yourself in the mm-hmm. mirror. You can't do good balance work unless you assess how out of balance you are, and you can't do good connection unless you talk to people about it.
Right.
So we try to create a level of reality and authenticity amongst the sports community using emotional intelligence language. It's pretty simple early on, and then you can get deeper into it. But that ultimately, what all that adds up to is a level of potential resilience. Because what they're going to face, what we know they're going to face, what you and I know, is they're going to come up against a time in their career where they are going to fail, and it might seem imminent that it's over. Mm-hmm. And you still got to step back into the box. You still got to get back on the field, go between the lines, and get after it again. You can't quit. You cannot quit just because it's hard or just because you think you're going to fail at the end of the season. You keep coming back and you keep stepping back into the box and trying again. And a lot of people, if they can't be perfect, if they can't reach their goal, they end up saying, that's enough, I'm done. And it's not about that. And I am evidence that it's not about that. My experience winning World Series championships was evident. It makes it evident that it's not about that. It's about actually what you learn along the way. It's about how you build the resilience along the way, that when it looks like you're going to get your teeth kicked in, you still get after it. You still go for the grind. And I think building that, every professional athlete has to learn to move past that moment where you just think, I don't think I'm going to hack it here.
To give you a chance to expand on this, that sounds like mental toughness. Being mm-hmm. able to step back in the box when even you feel like you're going to fail. Yeah. I know that feeling. Yeah. But then there's emotional intelligence. Mm-hmm. So tell me the difference. And I know they overlap.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I believe that emotional intelligence leads to mental toughness.
Okay.
Leads to mental health. Okay. If I would say the connection to it. Not everybody is going to be just mentally healthy waking up in the morning. There are things that we've all gone through at times in our lives that we're not starting at zero. We're starting at a negative oftentimes. But how do you start to move back to a baseline? How do you start to move into a positive direction? Mm-hmm. You have to be able to take some of the beating that is coming at you internally, that's coming at you externally, the criticism. There's always criticism. You have coping mechanisms you have to deal with. It's going to be hard to get back into a level of just base where now I feel like I'm not drowning in my struggles and in the fear of failing again.
Yeah.
And I think you can't start to do that unless you have quality connection and you start to share some of your experience right now in the depth of the pain and the suffering.
Yeah.
And when you start to do that, it lessens. It starts to not be as big of a deal that you're failing, because it's like, well, we're talking about it and I'm working on it and everybody deals with it.
Yeah.
And we're just doing it together.
I remember the feeling of being a great player, especially in college, but so afraid that I was going to fail. And it ended up leading to like a 2-year slump. It was horrible because I legitimately did not know how to deal with it, but I was also so afraid to tell anyone how afraid I was, because I'd built up this idea that, okay, if I stop believing in myself, if I show a crack in the armor of confidence, man, I'll lose it. I'll lose the edge, the magic touch, whatever it is that I had. But then in not sharing that I was afraid, or, not sharing that there already were chinks in the armor, it led to the worst slump of my life. Not just on the field, but off, with depression and everything else. That's probably the only time. It was about a 1.5-year period in college where I truly became depressed. But at the end of that, God broke me by breaking my body to where I had to leave the game for a full year, my draft year, and started to figure some stuff out, because it's it's over anyway, unless I get this game back as a gift. I don't know exactly where I was going with all that.
Well, you can look at that as a negative or a positive, right? And the way that you've chosen to look at it after the fact now is that God had a plan. He was doing some of those things in your life, even though you didn't understand it at the time. You probably hated it at the time. It was awful, but it led you to a level of resilience, or it led you to even the coping that you went through. And then that led you to a recognition of what you want to do and how you want to help people, and what your purpose really is. And so sometimes we look at something we're struggling with and we see it as the opposition of the pitcher on the mound. If I don't win today, if I don't win today, I'm out.
Yeah.
I'm quitting. This is not worth it. And I think we have to realize that some of that opposition is there to show us what we need to work on.
Well, I remember what I was going to say now. For me, I was so afraid of showing a crack in the armor or breaking. The truth is, I needed to talk about it. I needed to go into my head coach's office and say, listen, I came and had a great freshman year, did better than everybody expected me to do. And honestly, the pressure of that is what led me to slump my sophomore year. I feel like going into this junior year that I'm dying inside. Help me. I was afraid to ask for help, period.
Yeah, in the athlete culture, or in a lot of strong male cultures, it's not acceptable to say, yeah, I'm scared to death. I'm not sure how I'm going to do this.
Yeah.
But I think there's a certain time that you do that, pre-competition and post-competition. But then you do have to switch. In my opinion, when you're out there on the field of competition, it's not about sitting there and talking about how you feel. You know this. It's about execution. It's about, okay, now is the time to perform. Now is the time to see what the opposition is trying to do and overcome it. And it's the facing up to that. It's the facing up to both. You got to face up to the fact that there is a challenger out there, and I might not have my A game today, but am I still willing to go out there with my C game? And vice versa. When you step off the field, I got to now face up to everything that I went through on the field, and the shame I felt when I struck out.
Yeah.
And the fear I felt in the 9th inning, going in, and all the things that I had to block out. Now I've got to actually face up to that, because that will teach me if I pay attention to it. I may not have had time during the game to pay attention to this because it was all chaotic and I had to move in the moment really quickly. But now that it's a slower moment, this is why I love solitude for our lives. Solitude allows enough of a break in the chaos of what life is like that you actually have a chance to sit and think for a moment and go, maybe, is there an adjustment I could make here? Is there something I could be doing differently or doing better? And you start to listen to, I believe, God. You start to pray. You start to spend time in faith. Go, Lord, what are you trying to say? What do you want to say right now? What do I need to learn? How do I need to grow? Or sitting and talking to a friend, somebody that you trust, that you can bounce ideas off. When you have enough downtime, enough slow time away from the performance time, that's when you can learn, how do I jump back into the box and be better next time and have a different strategy to overcome. That's how we learn to become the best version of ourselves.
And I think that those solitude moments between games, away from the, obviously that's fantastic, but a lot of this deep work where you really change your philosophy, like I mentioned earlier, I got broken physically. I had to miss a whole season. When you talk about being alone for a while, that was actually a great thing for me. It was forced solitude. I had to leave Georgia Tech, go back to Tennessee, have 2 surgeries, rehab. Like you are forced to think through it all, to get kind of a new lease on life. And then getting to go back to the game for me was this joyful experience, like I was a kid again, because I thought it was gone, honestly. So yeah, solitude is huge.
You use the word forced, and I think oftentimes we look at that like it's a negative thing, especially when it's coming against
Just
us.
Forced.
Yeah, like that situation forced you to do this or that. We look at force as like, well, I don't want to be forced. Like as an athlete, you want to be forceful against the opposition, but like, as a human being, it's like, I don't want to feel like someone's trying to force me to do this or do that, or I don't want to force anybody to do this or do that. I think we should look at that as a positive thing. Not that you should try to force other people to fall in line with what you want, but when force comes against us, it is an opportunity to welcome it and say, okay, how do I want to interact with this? How am I going to grow from the opposition that I'm facing? And in that way, you start to welcome the opposition on the mound and go, man, this guy's got some good stuff. He's challenging me. I want to see what I need to work on, or how I can be better than I was yesterday. And I can't do that if I'm just going into the pitching machine that's throwing me heaters all the time in the same spot. And that's what we do when we look at our phones and when we go through the same routine and we don't try anything new and we stay comfortable. That's when we avoid the opposition. We avoid the resistance. We avoid, the force that's coming against us. And I think you're not going to learn when you do that. You use coping mechanisms to avoid it. Why don't we just let it happen so that we can grow from it and work on it?
Yeah, rolling with the punches is a huge part of it.
Yeah, it's like, I think of that, the Rocky, I think it was maybe Rocky 6 or something. He did a lot of those movies, Sylvester. Where he's talking.
Well, 6 was called Rocky Balboa. It was like his comeback movie.
It was
where he was like ripped at 63 years old.
His son was upset because they were, it's like Rocky coming back was affecting his life.
Yeah.
And he's like, look, kid, like you can claim you're a victim here, but like this is your life. We all just got to get up and keep going again. I forget exactly the words that he used, but essentially it was this like, it's your job to decide whether or not you're going to keep stepping back into the box. And it's nobody else's fault if things are hard. We don't need to blame anybody. It actually can be such a good thing for our growth and our development to like say, yeah, I'm going through a struggle and I'm working on it and I'm going to keep coming back to it every day. And I may never fully overcome this, but I'm growing every day. And I saw that in you, when we started getting to know each other.
Yeah. Well, cool. That's cool, man. How much of your time with Champion Forward is spent with active athletes versus people who are transitioning, going through some of the stuff we went through, transitioning to, regular life after sports?
Right now with Champion Forward, it's young active athletes, their parents and coaches. So a lot of times we're talking to the administrators that are trying to figure out, how do we coach the coaches? How do we coach the parents? How do we coach the kids in a new way when it's they grew up very different than we grew up. We didn't have phones in front of us. We didn't, there wasn't this social media stuff. So a lot of the leaders is who we're talking to about, this is what we're learning about this population and the kids. And as like, I've got a 15-year-old myself, so I'm getting intimately acquainted with what these kids are dealing with on a regular basis, in athletics as well. I'm also talking to some professional athletes and some also former professional athletes. I'm doing some mental skills coaching now, myself, which is something I really enjoy, not just around the game, but around the transitions. Because I think transitioning sometimes is one of the biggest oppositions we'll ever face. Transitioning from this was my identity. Now I don't know what my identity is.
Yeah, that's a big one.
That's a big one. It's a huge one for a lot of people's lives. And when we are able to walk through that in a transparent and vulnerable way, we can build a level of resiliency and strength that we never knew we had, and a level of identity in other things that translate, like what we did in sport translates to the other things that we're doing. The roles are not as important as who God made you to be in those different roles.
Yeah, because who God made you to be, your identity in Christ should undergird all those other things, whether it's baseball, sales, podcasting.
It's going to translate.
Yeah.
It's going to translate, because when you tap into who he made you to be and how you interact with the world, the way you did baseball playing is different than the way other people did it. And the way you do podcasting is going to be different than the way other people do it. And I find so much energy around that thought, because I can stop comparing myself and just start growing and becoming more of who I was made to be.
Mm-hmm. That's good, man. That's good. Well, are you working with, you talked a lot about the youth.
Yeah.
You working some with some pro teams?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I'm visiting, the Chicago Cubs here and there, just building relationships with the guys. And they occasionally want me to come around and just be a presence, I think, because of some of the achievement I had at that level. But it's good for me because I hear from the players what they're dealing with that's slightly different.
Yeah.
As time goes on, I think those of us that are getting older and we're not back in the midst of it, it's our job as the older generations now to go back and learn from them as we teach.
Okay. What are we learning from them?
We need to learn while we teach. We need to learn what their experience is and compare it to ours so that we can learn how to deliver what we already know and have experienced so that we can speed up the curve for them.
Okay.
That's something that I really think that Champion Forward is designed to do, is how do I help younger athletes deal with the challenges of balancing out spiritual, mental, academic, athletic, all these different parts of life. Mm-hmm. How do I help them do that? Where there was times in my life I was going, I don't know what to do.
Yeah.
I didn't know how to deal with that at the professional level. And I had great people around me, and some of them were going, well, we never had to deal with that. Yeah. So we don't know what you're going through. So it's our job to go ask them what they're going through and learn about it, and then try to come up with the strategies as to how to give them our experience ahead of time so that they can learn and potentially make different decisions at different times.
Yeah, that's good. Well, one of the biggest differences between when you and I played versus like the 15-year-old right now is social media.
Yeah.
So that's going to be on everybody's mind, whether it's coaches or what have you. What is the one or two like top things that come to mind when you think about the juxtaposition between being an athlete and then having this ongoing social media running in and not just social media. I mean, it's the phone in your hand. So it could be any number of things. And typically the problems are what comes to my mind first. But explain that whole new aspect of life and a couple bullet points you would always go over with maybe a high school coach.
Well, it's so embedded in our lives on a daily basis and the culture. I think it's not as easy as just being like, put it down.
Yeah.
Put it down. I think at some level there is a challenge to how you do that. How do we put it down? How do we get away from it a little bit more and find a space for something else? And I think what we're realizing is when people get inspired and they create content, they also create followers, right? They create a buzz. And so it's like we're living in this endless marketing, cycle where everybody's marketing just to grab attention. Attention is the new,
currency almost.
Currency. Yeah. It really is. Attention is the currency. I mean, I follow Gary Vee and I hear him say this all the time. And he's just like one of these people that is bottling this stuff up on a regular basis. And it's part of the reason why we're even doing a podcast, because people listen to him. And you want to deliver good quality information that might actually help them in their lives. But if all we're doing is consuming other people's content and not creating our own,
that's good.
Then ultimately we are not our own person. If you want to become your own person, if you want to have an identity, you got to be the creator. So consume some to be inspired.
And then go do.
And then go do.
Yeah.
Spend more of your time doing and creating than consuming.
Well, okay, let me stop you there. So I hear you. For somebody that's bent maybe the way I am, and I like doing this kind of thing, not everybody likes that, right? But everybody's got a phone. Yeah. So when you say creating content, let's say you're a 15-year-old ball player, you're more reserved by nature. You're not going to want to go like do a bunch of videos of yourself. What do you mean by creating content for them?
Content for your life. What I mean is experience.
There we go. Okay.
You know, I'm not saying video yourself. I'm saying experience things, especially at the younger ages. You're watching someone else's life. You're watching their experiences. Yeah. You're not experiencing it. So go out. You have to get off of that to go have your own experiences. That means looking people in the eyes and having a conversation with them, having an interaction. A human interaction, you know, and it's not like, hey, let's both look at this at the same time. It's actually like, let's put those away and like do something together. Yeah. And the more things that young people try, it's proven that you have to try new things in order to come up with new ideas. We're not just going to come up with our own ideas just sitting here doing nothing. You have to do things that are uncomfortable, that you wouldn't normally do. Do something you've never done before. Yeah. Do things that you like to do, but start to have a different experience with the thing that you like to do. If you like to play baseball, go play a different position during batting practice. If you like to hit, go pitch. You know, like do something different in order to get a new experience. Now, the risk here is that you're going to probably suck. You're probably not going to do very well. And you might look bad and feel bad for a moment. But until you get the experience, you can't learn things that you need to learn. So experience comes before learning. And my fear is that the younger generation now is forfeiting experience for content. It's
crazy when you say, I'm thinking of my older son, who's a very good athlete, and he loves to watch. He says, let's watch greatest catches. He's 7 years old. So we'll turn on Major League Baseball greatest catches on YouTube. And, 15 minutes in these different videos of great catches and great fielding plays and robs. I want to see robs, and then I'll notice if he does that long enough, like maybe a couple days it's rainy and he just does that. Yeah. Then when it's sunny and I'll be like, hey, buddy, you want to go out and do some greatest catches now? His first response will be like, no, let's just watch them. Yeah, because it's like it's already there. It's prepackaged, and he gets to feel the feeling of making a diving play. So it may take a little bit of pushing, and then I'm like, no, buddy, we're going outside. We're going to do some greatest catches. And then once he feels it a couple times and gets his feeling back, he loves it. It's all he wants to do. So but I can see how you could easily let the viewed experience become life instead of actually going and doing it.
Well, it's the highlight life. Yeah. Right?
Yeah.
Not the high life. Not the beer, whatever that was.
It was the high life.
Not the high life, the highlight life. And that's what kids are living right now is the highlight life. It's always highlights.
Without the struggle. Yeah.
That's not real life, and that's not the struggle. And you can't actually grow and build resilience unless you go through some of the struggle, which means you're not going to live highlights the whole time. Yeah. There's going to be some lowlights, and there's going to be some struggle, and it's not going to feel comfortable. And it's getting comfortable in that discomfort that is what builds the highlights. You're not going to make your own highlights unless you learn how to enjoy the lowlights to a certain degree. You got to go through all of it. Yeah. And then that's how the guys in the major leagues that are making highlights, they have struggled and toiled and had a lot more failures than the highlights.
If I could have learned how to not enjoy the failure necessarily, but realizes it was part of the process. Yeah. I'm not letting everybody down by failing a few times, but if I would have allowed myself earlier on in my career to let it do its thing, learn from it, and not think it's the end of the world. Yeah. Man, I think I would have come around so much faster, but those lessons took too long. I needed champion forward. That's right. What I needed. I truly, dude, you're filling such a great niche. I honestly said that. I needed something like that where it wasn't the pressure from my dad maybe, or a coach that's like, why don't you hit like you did last year? What's going on here? You're on a full ride. that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Because that was a lot of, so having someone that had done it at a high level come into my world and said, hey man, it's okay. You still got it, but you have to learn from these things. And by the way, take it easy, dude. Because that was my problem, is I made everything life or death for way too long.
Well, and there's a thing that in the mental health world they talk about now that it's a real important piece to achieving anything really well, and it's called self-compassion. Like if you can't deliver a level of self-compassion to yourself when you fail, that's going to lead to greater stress when you do. And so at some level, what drove a lot of us to perform and succeed is that we hated failing. You hated to lose. The most competitive people generally start their competitive nature not because they just love to win. It's because they hate the feeling of losing.
Do you see a transition happen where little kids love to play to win, but as they get older and the pressure mounts, they start to hate failure?
They start to hate it because there's so much shame. Like when you're in the ages of, let's say you started at 4 years old and you go till about, there's debate on what age it changes for kids, but they start to become a lot more aware of failing in front of other people and the shame that comes with that around 7, 8, 9, 10. And by the time they're 10, 11, 12, it's defining their identity in a lot of ways. So if they screw something up for the team and they lose the game, they feel a great amount of shame that comes with that. Well, if I don't want to feel that again, I'm going to work really, really hard to keep that from happening. Or I'm just going to quit because I don't like that feeling and I don't even want to deal with the possibility of that feeling, right? So it's actually such a necessary thing to feel and recognize, wow, why do I feel this? This is what Champion Forward does with people is like, you felt something there. Let's talk about why you did and then how you can actually build a level of identity that goes beyond failing in the 9th inning for your team. So that when it happens again, because it will, and it will happen that you will come through for your team, neither one of those define you. Because you're far more defined by who you are than what you're doing in the moment. Win or lose. And that I think is at the heart of what we're trying to do is let's help you realize that this isn't life or death. Actually, the way you go through this is how you're going to become who you are. Because it's not about the fact that you're going to win. It's not about the fact that you're going to lose. It's about the fact that you're going to push. You're going to grow. You're going to hurt. There's going to be some growing pains here. And you're going to move through that. And that is going to help you become the person that you're becoming.
Yeah, that's so good stuff, man. Well, I know that you and the Champion Forward team, how many people is it?
There's about 4 or 5 of us now. But we got to build out this infrastructure quickly because there's a lot of people that need the work and they're asking for the work. And so we're trying not to do too much too early. But we are building resources and also partnering with some other companies to be able to build companies and nonprofits to be able to build things faster.
That's good. Well, everybody can glean from your podcast right now, whether they can utilize the services or not. It's just the Champion Forward podcast,
That's right.
And then if somebody, a team, a coach, if they do want to contact you guys and look at your real services, why don't you tell everybody, where to find you to do that?
I think the best place to do it is the Champion Forward Instagram. Just because there's a link tree on there and that's got all the information on the link tree there. That's the easiest way to do it for people that are already, connected in the social media world. Website wise, championforward.org. It's pretty simple, but I think all that stuff is still getting built out. And but as you know, this is the type of work that it's not really ever going to be fully built out because it needs to grow as the culture changes and grows because we have to provide solutions to the problems that are happening right now. And one of the things we do know that's happening right now is too many kids are feeling that level of anxiety and depression at a higher clip in the sporting world than they are in the regular academic world. And it's already super high for every kid right now. So as adults, we got to try to build some spaces where they can continue to push forward and excel, but also have some safety to talk about what they're going through.
Yeah, that's good, man. Well, it's incredibly important work. You got any last words for the audience?
Man, I always I always have too many words, but I think
this is all great stuff, though, man.
I think it's just I'm so passionate about helping people, like I said, experience things and learning what do they like and not like about what they're doing. Because even if you experience something and you just don't even like it, it's like I don't want to hear that again, or I don't want to experience that again. Well, you're learning something about yourself by the I don't want that.
Yeah.
And you also learn, because when you start to learn what you don't like, if you look at the converse, there is something that you do like in order to kind of go against that.
Right, yeah.
Right. So, I mean, if I hate conflict, it means I love peace. And vice versa. Like
sure.
if you don't like stillness, it means you like a little bit of noise and chaos. And so you can learn about yourself that way. And in that way, put yourself into more experiences that actually give you energy, because I think energy comes with love and passion, right?
Yeah,
so if I'm passionate about something, the energy is going to come out. And when I fail, it's like, so what? I'm going back for more, right? Because there's energy around it. And I think you find energy by having experiences and then learning what did I like and not like about that experience. So that's kind of what I did when I ended baseball. It's like, well, I was really passionate about this. Now I'm not doing it anymore. What else am I really passionate about? And I found that sitting down and talking about mental challenges and the skills involved around that and how you build a level of resilience, like, gave me energy.
Yeah.
Because of my personal experiences. So because I saw the energy and then I saw your energy for the stuff that you were doing, I was like, dude, go do it.
Yeah.
Go do it.
You did.
Go try it. Like,
I remember.
Like this is why it's so powerful, because your energy comes through the stuff you get to chance to discuss and pulling this out of people like me. So it's awesome what you're doing, man. Yeah. I love it. And
thank you.
I'm excited for it. I mean, it's not for everybody.
Yeah.
This is what I like to tell people. It's like, I'm not for everybody. You're not for everybody, but you're for somebody.
There we go.
There's somebody out there that understands what you've been through and what you're going through. And the questions that you need to ask and work through. And, the more people that you can share that with, the more people are going to resonate and go, yep, I know what that's like. I know what that feels like. I know what that sounds like. I need to hear what they have to say. Yeah. I think that's the beauty of this type of information getting out there.
That's awesome. Well, Ben, I don't want to put you on the spot or anything, but would you close us with a prayer? Because we're talking to the same kind of audience here, man.
Sure, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, Lord, thank you for this opportunity to sit and have this conversation with Jeremy. Lord, thank you for the work that he's doing, the things that he's learning, and the things that other people are learning through him. God, we're all just in process here. We don't have it all figured out, and we all want to achieve in our lives. We all want to help other people in our lives. And I just pray that we can do that with humility. I pray that we can do that with grace and with truth. And at the end of the day, that we can inspire and be passionate about the things that you've created us for. So I pray that for Jeremy here and for the rest of the audience listening, Lord, that you would give them a level of inspiration today, that they would feel more energized going into the next things that they do. I pray these things in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, brother.
Yeah.
Really enjoyed it. Have to have you back.
Yeah, that was great.
Zobrist 5 out of 16 to start the season. And he takes off and he walked him. Another attempt and a good one. And Zobrist is safe. Infield hit. Cubs lead 3-2. Zobrist in the air to deep right. And it will go. He's got another. It's 4-2. And he drives one to right again. Harper back to the wall. 3-run homer. What a series Ben Zobrist is putting together. Zobrist high and deep to right, and it will get out of here. Splash down home run. Ground ball fair. That'll extend his hitting streak to 13. And he's at second with a double.
So, Ben, we shot our interview earlier today, but as I watched this, I'm kind of pissed because I'm jealous, dude. You got there, man. Good for you, brother. I'm proud of you. Keep watching.
Zobrist to right. Gorgeous back. Into the basket. A home run. A 3-run shot for Zobrist.
You win a car. You win a car. You win a car.
Caught by Zobrist. Inning over. Double play as DeJesus was already around third.
Pretty high.
Zobrist to left, and it will go to start the ball game.
Zobrist hitless tonight. Rockets one into right. This ball is gone. It's a one-run game. Home run, Ben Zobrist, number 11 as a Cub. And it's 4-3 here in the 7th.
Baez can't get it. Votto around third. Here comes the throw by Zobrist. And Votto's out by 10 feet to end the inning. Deep right. Way back. It'll go. First hit of the series. It's a home run. And it's 3-1. Joe Madden. In the American League, he was an all-star. He hits one deep to right, and this one will get out. A 2-run homer for Zobrist. And the Cubs strike first here. Caught by Zobrist as he robs Reyes of a base hit. Hard at diving stop. Ben Zobrist to end the inning. Speaking of, looks like that'll be a home run. It is. Ben Zobrist goes deep. The Cubs have a hit. The Cubs have a run. 1-0. Driven to right again. And it'll go. 2-homer night, Ben Zobrist. He's on his way to a Bryant. Zobrist powders one to right, and it'll go into the bullpen. That's 3 homers in the series.
Lined into right field. That'll rattle around. Bryant scores easily. Rizzo held it third. And it's a 2-run ball game with nobody out of the ninth.
Gonzalez will have a play at the plate. Throw home. In time. Secondary lead. He starts going back when the ball's hit. That little movement right there could very well cost Gonzalez. When you have a huge lead, you're worried about the batter swinging through and maybe the back pin. That's a base hit into right center field. The 3rd hit of the night for Ben Zobrist. That's one into the corner. A rocket. Rizzo will dig for 3rd. Chisenhall falls down. Here comes Rizzo. Zobrist to 3rd. 3-0 Chicago. Zobrist stands a base hit. Cubs will take the lead. Almora digging to the plate. Zobrist delivers 7-6 in the 10th.
Scott Clubhouse is fired up as you would expect. It's now time for the most valuable player trophy presented by Chevrolet. What's going on, Commissioner?